The rain pressed against the glass with a steady rhythm, its dull percussion filling the silence of Claire's apartment. Once, she had loved rainy evenings, candles, tea, laughter shared with someone who cared. Now, the sound only deepened the void inside her. She sat cross-legged on the couch, the glow of her phone illuminating her tired face. Her thumb hovered over old photos stored in the digital archives of her past life. A snapshot of Ryan's arm around her waist at their engagement party appeared on screen, both of them smiling as though the world belonged to them. Her lips trembled, but her expression stayed locked, her emotions walled in as they had been for years. Without hesitation, she pressed delete. For a fleeting second, she felt a rush of power, control over what no longer served her. But before the satisfaction could root itself, a notification appeared like a cruel twist of fate. Her chest tightened as she read it. Ryan Mitchell and Hannah Clark invite you to celebrate their wedding. The name pulsed on the screen. Hannah, her best friend, her confidant, the one who knew every secret, every scar. The betrayal wasn't just a reopened wound, it was a knife twisted deeper. For all her practiced composure, Claire's mask cracked. Her fingers clenched around the phone as if gripping it harder would stop the world from spinning forward, from forcing her to face the unbearable truth that Ryan had chosen not just someone else, but the very person who had once promised never to hurt her. The following morning, Claire dressed herself in the sharp armor of her success, a tailored suit, perfect heels, flawless makeup. At her marketing firm, she walked the glass halls like a queen who needed no one. To colleagues, she was untouchable, intimidating, enviable. But beneath that steel facade, the news of Ryan and Hannah's engagement festered like poison. During a morning meeting, a junior associate made a small mistake on a presentation draft. Normally, Claire would have corrected it with curt efficiency, but today her anger lashed out unfiltered. "Do you even know what you're doing?" she snapped, her voice slicing through the conference room. Silence fell. The young associate's face flushed with humiliation, and Claire's team shifted uncomfortably in their seats. She noticed, but she didn't stop. Her fury wasn't really about them, it was about the photo, the invitation, the lies. Work had once been her sanctuary, the one place betrayal couldn't touch her. Now, even there, the mask threatened to slip. Later, riding the subway home, she leaned against the cold metal pole, trying to steady herself. Across the aisle, two strangers chatted, their words piercing through the clamor of the train. When it's real love, it lasts. You just know. Claire's chest constricted. Her reflection in the train window looked composed, but inside, she was unraveling. Lasts, she thought bitterly. If love lasted, she wouldn't be here alone, watching the man she once thought was her forever pledge himself to her best friend. That night, the city stretched out beyond her apartment windows, neon lights bleeding into the rain-streaked glass. Claire curled up with a glass of wine, trying to drown the ache of betrayal with distraction. She scrolled endlessly, letting meaningless headlines and curated social feeds numb her. The doorbell broke the monotony, sharp and unexpected. For a moment, she froze, wondering who would show up uninvited at this hour. Hesitantly, she rose, her bare feet padding across the hardwood floor. Pulling open the door, she expected a delivery mix-up or a neighbor in need. Instead, standing in the hallway was Ethan Mitchell, Ryan's younger brother. The sight knocked the breath from her lungs. Time hadn't dimmed his presence, if anything, it had sharpened it. His hair was slightly longer, his jawline more defined, but those eyes, so much like Ryan's, yet carrying a different depth, met hers with an intensity that unsettled her. "Claire," he said quietly, almost carefully, as though her name was a fragile thing. Memories she had locked away flickered. Ethan at family gatherings, always quieter, always watching, their conversations charged with an unspoken understanding. But that was years ago, before the fracture, before she built walls so high no one could climb them. She tightened her grip on the doorframe, unsure whether to slam it shut or let him in. His presence was a reminder of everything she wanted to forget, yet also a thread tying her to a past she hadn't fully severed. The night shifted in that moment, and she knew nothing would remain untouched. Claire had once been the kind of person who saw the world through soft, colorful lenses, an art teacher who found magic in brushstrokes and the way sunlight hit the canvas. Her life had been simple but rich with meaning, full of laughter, students' proud smiles, and quiet evenings sketching in her tiny apartment. But all of that changed the night Ryan walked away. His betrayal wasn't dramatic or explosive, it was quiet, insidious, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own trust. The shock left her hollow, and the once vibrant artist withdrew from the world she had loved. Art, once her sanctuary, became a reminder of vulnerability she no longer wanted to feel. In its place, she built a career in corporate design, where structure, deadlines, and cold aesthetics gave her a sense of control. Creativity was still there, but it was disciplined, sterilized, and unyielding, much like the walls she built around her heart. In boardrooms, presentations, and client meetings, Claire thrived, her sharp wit and assertive demeanor demanding respect, keeping others at a distance. Colleagues admired her, sometimes feared her, but no one knew the soft heart she had buried. The transformation was survival, a deliberate, necessary shield against the possibility of betrayal again. She had traded passion for security, spontaneity for predictability, and warmth for the icy precision that now defined her life. Yet, beneath that polished exterior, the ember of the old Claire still flickered, fragile, hidden, waiting for a spark she didn't realize was coming. Claire's family watched her transformation with growing concern. Her parents had always been her anchors, warm and encouraging, their home a refuge of unconditional love. But now, every holiday, every Sunday dinner, became a subtle battleground. Her mother's gentle inquiries about her love life, her father's attempts to offer advice or share stories of reconciliation, were met with deflection or irritation. "I don't believe in love anymore," she would insist, a shielded declaration that kept them at bay. Her family saw the loneliness hidden behind her meticulous routines and her relentless drive for professional perfection, but Claire interpreted their concern as intrusion. They couldn't reach the part of her that longed for trust and connection, a part that Ryan had crushed years ago. Into this landscape of controlled isolation entered the supporting figures of her present life. Hannah, once her best friend, had been part of her inner circle, cheerful, warm, seemingly genuine, but time revealed cracks beneath her facade. Sweetness masked subtle manipulation. Hannah's alliances, choices, and the fact that she now stood poised to marry Ryan were a betrayal that stung more than any romantic heartbreak. Ryan himself remained the same charismatic figure who had undone Claire's sense of safety, his presence a reminder of why she fortified herself. And then there was Ethan, Ryan's younger brother, whose return introduced a morally grounded, empathetic, yet deeply scarred presence that unsettled Claire. His life as a public defender, defending the vulnerable, symbolized the exact moral and emotional compass she had forsaken, forcing her to confront parts of herself she thought she had buried. At the heart of Claire's current existence was a delicate balance of control and independence. She had built a life that allowed no room for compromise, vulnerability, or distraction. Work was her anchor, organization her fortress, and self-sufficiency her armor. Her ambitions, though grounded in corporate success, were a shield against the chaos of unhealed emotions and the treachery of those she had once loved. Yet, the emotional stakes ran deeper than professional pride, they were rooted in survival. Ryan's impending marriage to Hannah reopened old wounds, and Ethan's unexpected reappearance threatened to destabilize the equilibrium she had so painstakingly constructed. Ethan's presence was a paradox, familiar, comforting, yet impossible to ignore, a reminder of a past both tender and complicated. Unlike Ryan, Ethan's morality and empathy were unwavering, reflecting a kind of integrity that made Claire question the rigid rules she had imposed on her own heart. His subtle observations, quiet concern, and unspoken understanding were the antithesis of betrayal, challenging Claire's narrative that love equals pain. Each interaction with him forced her to confront memories, regrets, and desires she had meticulously buried. The tension between her desire for emotional safety and the inevitable pull of connection created a conflict she could no longer easily dismiss. Ethan's presence wasn't merely a plot device, it was a mirror reflecting all that Claire had lost, avoided, and potentially could reclaim. For the first time in years, she faced the possibility that love, trust, and vulnerability might not be weaknesses, but keys to reclaiming herself. Claire had just settled into the familiar hum of her favorite cafe, the aroma of espresso and baked goods momentarily dulling the persistent ache of betrayal. Ethan's arrival was unassuming at first. He slid into the seat opposite her, his expression serious, almost tense. The years since they last saw each other had added layers of maturity and a quiet intensity to his presence. Without preamble, he dropped the bombshell. Ryan and Hannah, the seemingly perfect couple whose Instagram-perfect lives had haunted Claire, were embroiled in lawsuits, financial scandals, and corporate entanglements that no one outside their inner circle knew about. Ethan's tone was calm, measured, but his eyes betrayed urgency. He explained how the scandals were meticulously hidden from the public, designed to protect their images while leaving others, especially those connected to them, vulnerable to fallout. Claire felt the air in the cafe thicken around her, the words striking like ice water. This wasn't just gossip or exaggerated rumor, it was a warning. Ethan stressed that Claire needed to be careful, that her proximity to them, even by mere association, could pull her back into chaos. Her carefully curated life, built on control and emotional distance, suddenly seemed precarious. The world she had painstakingly reconstructed could unravel in an instant, and the source of the threat was the very people who had once shaped her heartbreak. Ethan's revelation was more than information, it was a catalyst, a spark igniting both curiosity and dread within her. The next morning, Claire returned to the cafe, hoping for the comfort of routine. The steam rising from her latte, the soft murmur of conversation, even the worn leather chairs, all were familiar anchors. But fate intervened in the form of Ryan. He appeared at the counter, impeccably dressed, his smile charming and effortless as if nothing had ever occurred between them. Claire's heart skipped a beat, a reflexive reaction she scolded herself for internally. Ryan approached, engaging her with casual conversation, his tone light, teasing, as if their past, the betrayal, the heartbreak, was irrelevant. Claire felt an icy tension rise in her chest. Every word he spoke was a reminder of vulnerability she had worked so hard to erase. She kept her composure, responding with the measured politeness she had perfected over the years, but the encounter left her shaking internally. The emotional hit was immediate and visceral, a mix of unresolved anger, lingering affection, and the sting of memory. Every gesture, every glance from him felt calibrated to disarm her, to test the walls she had built. Once Ryan left, the cafe seemed to shrink around her. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her coffee cup, the warmth failing to reach her core. Ethan's warning about the entanglements of Ryan and Hannah returned to her mind, and she realized just how dangerously close she had come to being drawn back into their orbit, even in this ordinary, everyday moment. Ethan's next words hit even harder. He confessed that he sought Claire out not merely out of concern for her safety, but because he believed Ryan had sabotaged her career years ago, intentionally undermining opportunities to keep her dependent on him. The revelation ignited a storm of emotions within Claire: rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. Memories of missed promotions, subtle manipulations, and times when her ideas were dismissed or stolen returned in sharp clarity. Ethan's quiet moral certainty, his unwavering gaze, made her confront the truth she had long buried. Ryan's charm had masked calculated cruelty, and she had been a pawn in his pursuit of control. The anger was intoxicating, a fire that surged through her veins, but so was the ache of betrayal all over again. Despite the turmoil, Ethan's insight offered clarity, a framework for understanding the depth of the deceit she had endured. Claire's mind raced, weighing the risks, the possible consequences, and the lingering desire for answers. In that moment, she made a decision: she would not allow herself to be pulled back into the chaos, no matter how familiar or tempting. Yet, beneath her vow of detachment, a part of her wanted answers. She needed to know the truth, not only to reclaim her life but to confront the past she had tried to bury. The inciting incident had done its work. It shattered complacency, forced a confrontation with betrayal, and set the stage for a journey that would test Claire's control, independence, and heart. The family dinner was supposed to be a casual gathering, a neutral territory where old ties could be acknowledged without igniting old wounds. Instead, it became a battlefield. Claire arrived with measured composure, determined to maintain her dignity despite the tight knot of tension in her stomach. Ryan, as effortlessly charismatic as ever, sat across from her with that infuriating half-smile, his presence a reminder of past betrayals. Conversation started lightly, small talk, polite laughter, but the moment Ryan noticed Claire's professional success, the tone shifted. "So, you're still designing logos for some boutique firms?" he asked with a mock casualness, his words dripping with condescension. Each phrase was a calculated jab, belittling the career she had painstakingly built in his absence. Claire felt heat rise to her cheeks but held herself firm, responding with calm precision, though her voice carried an edge sharper than she intended. Hannah intervened, smiling sweetly, ostensibly to mediate, but her words carried their own subtle venom. Claire has always been ambitious, she said, the compliment laced with mockery, a reminder of her outsider status in that moment, Claire reclaimed not only her dignity but also the moral and emotional high ground, leaving Ryan exposed and powerless while she emerged stronger, clear-eyed, and ready for the life she had fought to protect. The days following the rehearsal dinner felt surreal for Claire. The chaos of revelations had faded, leaving her with clarity and a sense of hard-won freedom. She methodically went through her belongings, gathering remnants of her past with Ryan and Hannah, old photographs, letters, and gifts that had once symbolized trust and affection. Each item brought a fleeting pang of nostalgia, but also the sharp reminder of betrayal. One by one, she boxed them up, labeling them with precision before taking them to donation centers or recycling facilities. The act was cathartic, a physical manifestation of her emotional severing. It wasn't just about discarding objects, it was about reclaiming space in her life that had been occupied by toxic entanglements. With every donation, she felt lighter, freer, as if the weight of old grievances and heartache was lifting. Even as she walked away from the last box, there was no bitterness, only a quiet empowerment, a recognition that she had survived, endured, and now had the agency to define her own life. Her liberation was not about vengeance or schadenfreude, it was about reclaiming her dignity, boundaries, and emotional sovereignty. In the process, Claire discovered a surprising relief. Letting go did not make her weaker, it made her stronger, more whole, and ready to embrace the parts of herself she had locked away. With the emotional clutter cleared, Claire began turning her attention inward, reconnecting with passions she had long abandoned. An unexpected opportunity arrived, a prestigious art exhibit seeking innovative, contemporary designers. At first, she hesitated, fear and doubt lingered, but the invitation stirred something dormant within her. Accepting it wasn't just a professional decision, it was a symbolic reclamation of identity. She spent hours revisiting sketches, experimenting with colors, and blending techniques she had forsaken for the sake of corporate predictability. The creative process became a therapy of sorts, each brushstroke reinforcing her autonomy, each completed piece a testament to resilience. Colleagues who once viewed her purely as a controlled, corporate powerhouse began noticing the spark of originality re-emerging, a side of Claire that had been buried under years of caution and self-preservation. The gallery exhibition became a milestone, not just professionally but personally. It reminded her that passion, creativity, and authenticity were integral parts of her identity, not optional luxuries she could abandon when hurt. The act of creating and sharing her art publicly symbolized her reclaiming of agency over both her career and life. Through this process, Claire realized that empowerment wasn't about proving others wrong, it was about affirming herself, embracing the joy she once feared she'd lost, and daring to be vulnerable in ways that nurtured growth rather than risked destruction. Throughout this period, Ethan remained a steady presence, neither a savior nor a distraction, but a companion walking beside her as she navigated recovery and rediscovery. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and subtle moments of support. There were no cinematic declarations or promises of instant happily ever after. Instead, there were quiet dinners, long walks, and evenings spent discussing their pasts, flaws, and ambitions. Each interaction tested their trust, reminding them that two wounded people attempting love required patience, communication, and vulnerability. The emotional realism underscored the growth Claire had achieved. She could open herself to connection without relinquishing her autonomy or allowing old patterns to dictate her choices. One afternoon, in her sunlit studio, she returned to a canvas she had abandoned years ago, a piece she had started with Ryan's influence, filled with muted colors and tentative strokes. With Ethan's gentle encouragement, she painted over the unfinished work, completing it with boldness, vibrancy, and intention. The act was profoundly symbolic, reclaiming her creativity, rewriting her narrative, and integrating lessons from the past into her present. The finished painting didn't erase the memories of betrayal, but it transformed them into a source of strength and beauty. In this resolution, Claire's journey culminated not in perfection, but in empowerment, self-expression, and the willingness to allow new, meaningful connections like the one with Ethan to develop, imperfect yet authentic. Months had passed since the upheaval of revelations, confrontations, and self-reclamation, and now Claire stood at the threshold of a new chapter. The gallery buzzed with energy, conversations floating through the air like drifting sparks, laughter mixing with the soft strains of piano music. Claire's heart beat steadily, a measured rhythm that reflected both nerves and pride. Her first solo exhibit was a culmination of years spent reclaiming creativity she had once abandoned in the shadow of betrayal and heartbreak. Guests moved from painting to painting, absorbing the colors, textures, and emotions each piece conveyed. At the center, she lingered before a painting titled Heartless. The brushstrokes were jagged yet deliberate, a visual manifestation of the cold, controlled person she had become after Ryan's betrayal. Shadows and sharp angles dominated the canvas, evoking a mixture of loss, pain, and survival. Yet, even in its starkness, there was beauty, strength carved from resilience, an acknowledgement of the person she had been forced to become. People lingered, taking photographs, murmuring impressions, but Claire's focus wasn't on their reactions, it was on her reflection in the polished wood floor, on the path that had led her here. Every sacrifice, every tear, every act of courage that had brought her to this night coalesced in the space between viewer and canvas, a silent testament to her journey from brokenness to empowerment. Beside Heartless hung another painting, contrasting sharply yet harmoniously with its predecessor. Titled Beginning Again, the piece radiated warmth, subtlety, and quiet strength. The colors were soft, golden hues, gentle blues, and blush pinks, but layered with depth, representing the complexity of vulnerability balanced with resilience. Unlike the harsh lines of her earlier work, this canvas displayed curves, flow, and light, symbolizing Claire's readiness to embrace life and love anew. Hidden within the brushstrokes were hints of struggle, shadows beneath the light, muted undertones that whispered of pain, but they were tempered by luminous elements that conveyed hope, renewal, and strength derived from experience. It was a reflection not just of her art, but of her emotional metamorphosis, acknowledging the past without letting it dictate her present. Visitors paused longer at this piece, drawn to its subtle honesty and the quiet message it carried that strength and softness could coexist. Claire felt an internal hum of satisfaction. A quiet affirmation that she was reclaiming parts of herself she had thought lost. Beginning Again was more than a painting, it was a milestone, a declaration that her story didn't end with betrayal, heartbreak, or cold walls. It was a visual representation of agency, choice, and the possibility of connection that was no longer dangerous but empowering. In that moment, standing between two contrasting canvases, Claire realized her journey had reached a delicate equilibrium, the scars of the past acknowledged, the present embraced, and the future open to possibility. As the evening unfolded, Claire allowed herself a brief reprieve from the hum of conversations and compliments. She sipped water, eyes scanning the crowd, when Ethan quietly approached. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic proclamations, just 2 cups of coffee. He set one beside her, his smile gentle, steady, and reassuring. "I'm glad you opened the door," he said softly, a simple statement loaded with shared history, understanding, and the promise of cautious connection. Claire's chest tightened, not with longing or desperation, but with recognition of the patience, respect, and quiet support he embodied. He didn't rescue her, he simply stood beside her, a companion navigating life's aftermath together. Later, in the calm of her studio, she opened her sketchbook, pen in hand. The words flowed, unfiltered yet deliberate. "He broke me. I turned cold. But love, real love, doesn't knock you down. It knocks and waits until you open the door." The act of writing was both closure and affirmation, a ritual solidifying her emotional growth. She acknowledged the pain, celebrated the resilience it fostered, and recognized the agency she now held in choosing what and whom to welcome into her life. The exhibition, Ethan's presence, and the journaling converged into a moment of quiet triumph, a final, unspoken testament to her journey from heartbreak and betrayal to empowerment, creativity, and cautious, hopeful openness to love. In that space, Claire didn't just close a chapter, she began a new one, painted with courage, wisdom, and possibility.